October 15, 2024. When a black teenager walked into Manhattan's most exclusive private school wearing a scholarship student's uniform, the wealthy parents laughed and one mother sneered, "I'll pay double your tuition if you can prove you belong here." But when the girl calmly pulled out her phone and made one call, their smiles vanished in seconds. What she revealed next didn't just shock the room. It shattered everything they thought they knew about power, privilege, and who really owned the building they were standing in. But here's what nobody expected. Why would someone with that much wealth and influence choose to hide their identity and endure public humiliation instead of revealing the truth from the start? The crystal chandeliers of Westbridge Academy's Grand Hall cast geometric shadows across marble floors that cost more per square foot than most people earned in a month. Tonight, the space hummed with the particular frequency of wealth, low voices discussing stock portfolios, European vacations, and which Ivy League schools their children would attend as if acceptance letters were birthright rather than achievement. The annual Donor Gala, an event where checkbooks opened wider than hearts, where networking mattered more than the students the money supposedly served, and where appearance was everything. Vanessa Whitmore stood near the champagne fountain, her silk Valentino gown shimmering like liquid silver. At 46, she was Manhattan real estate royalty, third-generation old money that whispered rather than shouted. Her husband, Richard, was a hedge fund manager. Their twin sons were junior varsity lacrosse stars. Their daughter had already been pre-accepted to Yale through a generous donation. Life was a well-oiled machine of privilege, and Vanessa was the engineer. "Did you see the new scholarship students?" whispered Patricia Ashford, another mother who'd perfected the art of judgment disguised as concern. She wore Chanel and diamonds that could fund a small country's education budget. "I heard they're letting in 10 this year." 10. "Diversity quotas," Vanessa replied, taking a sip of champagne that cost $400 a bottle. "The board thinks it makes us look progressive. As long as they keep those students separate from the legacy families, I suppose it's harmless." "Separate?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Different classes, different lunch periods, different everything. They're here for the education, not the connections. Those are reserved for families who've actually invested in this institution." Vanessa's smile was ice wrapped in politeness. Across the hall, servers in black and white uniforms moved like synchronized shadows. Invisible, efficient, disposable. The kind of people who attended Westbridge events but would never attend Westbridge. Near the entrance, the massive oak doors, imported from Scotland in 1897, opened with a whisper. Naomi Brooks stepped inside. She was 17, 5'6", with dark skin that glowed against the harsh white of her Westbridge uniform. Not the elegant evening wear that surrounded her, but the standard-issue blazer, white shirt, and plaid skirt that marked her as exactly what she was. A scholarship student who'd been called in to help with event setup. Her natural hair was pulled into a neat bun. No jewelry except small silver studs in her ears, a gift from her grandmother. Her shoes were practical, polished but worn at the heels. She carried a clipboard and moved with purpose toward the coordinator station near the kitchen entrance. She didn't belong in this room. Everyone knew it, especially Vanessa Whitmore, whose radar for outsiders was finely tuned from decades of gatekeeping. "Oh my God," Patricia breathed, staring at Naomi. "Is that one of the scholarship students? At the gala?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "She's probably here to serve. Though I must say, having them wear the school uniform while working is a bit tacky. Makes it look like our students are wait staff." Naomi reached the coordinator, a frazzled woman named Mrs. Henderson who managed school events, and showed her the clipboard. They spoke briefly. Mrs. Henderson pointed toward the stage, where the audiovisual setup still needed organizing. Naomi nodded and headed that direction. She had to cross the main floor, through the crowd of silk and diamonds and inherited wealth. Every step echoed her difference. Vanessa watched her approach, something ugly stirring in her chest. Not quite anger, not quite fear, something in between. The discomfort of having the invisible made visible. As Naomi passed their circle, Vanessa stepped slightly into her path. "Excuse me," Vanessa said, her voice sharp enough to cut through nearby conversations. "Are you lost?" Naomi stopped, looked up. Her eyes were calm, intelligent, and cautious. No, ma'am. I'm heading to the stage to help with the AV equipment. The AV equipment, Vanessa repeated slowly, as if the words were foreign. And you're wearing a Westbridge uniform because? Because I'm a student here, ma'am. I was asked to help with setup since I'm on the tech crew. Patricia leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. A student? Really? And how exactly did you afford Westbridge tuition? Sweetheart. The condescension in that single word, sweetheart, could have filled an ocean. I'm on scholarship, Naomi replied evenly. Academic and STEM scholarship. Ah, Vanessa's smile widened, but there was nothing warm in it. A scholarship student. How charitable of the school. Other parents were turning now, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood. I earned my place here, Naomi said quietly, her grip tightening on the clipboard. My grades. Your grades, Vanessa interrupted, taking a step closer. Let me guess. You had a 4.0 at some public school in Brooklyn? Took AP classes? Did a little science fair project? Naomi's jaw tightened. I had a 4.0 at Franklin Academy. I took 12 AP courses, and I won the National Robotics Championship 2 years running. How impressive, Patricia cooed in a tone that suggested the opposite. And now you're here, at Westbridge, surrounded by students whose families have built legacies. Students who don't just excel academically but understand culture, refinement, connections. Do you think a scholarship can buy you that? Naomi's voice remained steady, but something flickered in her eyes. Hurt, anger, both. I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm trying to get an education. An education, Vanessa said, circling slightly like a predator. The crowd had fully turned now. Champagne glasses paused mid-sip, conversations dying. Let me be very clear, sweetheart. Westbridge Academy isn't just about education. It's about belonging. It's about tradition. It's about families who've invested, really invested, in this institution for generations. She paused, letting that sink in. You're here on charity. A feel-good story the board can point to when people ask about diversity. But let's not pretend you're actually one of us. The silence that followed was suffocating. Naomi stood frozen, the clipboard trembling slightly in her hands. Around them, wealthy parents watched with expressions ranging from uncomfortable to cruelly amused. No one intervened. You know what? Vanessa continued, her voice rising slightly, playing to the audience now. I'll make you a deal. A fun little game. She opened her designer clutch and pulled out her checkbook. Hermes leather, monogrammed. I will personally write a check to double your scholarship. Right here, right now. Every penny. 4 years at Westbridge. Fully funded by me. She clicked her pen dramatically. But only if you can prove you actually belong here. Patricia giggled. Others murmured approvingly. Prove I belong? Naomi repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, show me your balance, your bank account, your family's net worth. Prove to me that you're not just some charity case playing dress-up in a world you don't understand. Vanessa's smile was vicious. Because here's what I think. You walked in here wearing that uniform like armor, hoping no one would notice the difference. But we notice, sweetheart. We always notice. Naomi's hands stopped trembling. Her spine straightened, and when she spoke, her voice was ice over steel. You want to see my balance? Oh, I'd love to, Vanessa said, laughing. I'll pay double your entire scholarship if you can show me a bank account that proves you belong in this room. The crowd leaned in. Naomi slowly reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her phone. It wasn't the latest iPhone that most Westbridge students carried. It was a year-old model, practical, unadorned. She unlocked it with deliberate calm. I opened an app and turned the screen toward Vanessa Whitmore. The numbers glowed in the dim light. Vanessa's face went from smug satisfaction to confused squinting to absolute, bone-deep shock in the span of 3 seconds. Patricia leaned over to look. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The account balance read, $847 million. $847 million. In a personal checking account, under the name Naomi J. Brooks. Vanessa's mouth opened. No sound came out. Naomi's voice was quiet but cut through the stunned silence like a blade. You wanted to see my balance. There it is. So tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, are you going to write that check now? Because by your own logic, I just proved I belong here more than anyone in this room. The crowd erupted in whispers, confused, shocked, disbelieving. That's fake, Vanessa stammered, her face flushing. You photoshopped that. You can't possibly. Naomi swiped to another screen. A Forbes profile. A news article from 3 months ago. Teen tech prodigy sells AI algorithm to Silicon Valley giant for $850 million. And there, in the article's photo, was Naomi Brooks. I am 17 years old, standing in a Google conference room, shaking hands with their CEO. The whispers turned to gasps. Patricia backed away like Naomi had suddenly caught fire. Vanessa's entire world tilted. I didn't come here on charity, Naomi said, her voice stronger now. I came here because Westbridge has the best robotics program in the state and I wanted to learn. I wore this uniform because I'm proud to be a student here. I kept my background private because I wanted to be treated like everyone else, not like a walking dollar sign. She looked around the room, at the faces that had judged her, dismissed her, mocked her. But you couldn't do that, could you? You saw a black girl in a scholarship uniform and decided you knew everything about me. You decided I was less than. You decided I didn't belong. Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out except a strangled sound. Naomi turned her phone toward the crowd. This isn't about money. It's about respect. It's about assumptions. And it's about the fact that not one of you, not one, thought to ask who I was before deciding what I was worth. She lowered her phone, slipped it back into her pocket, and picked up her clipboard. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have AV equipment to set up. Because unlike some people in this room, when I commit to something, I follow through. And with that, Naomi Brooks walked through the silent, stunned crowd toward the stage. Every step echoing louder than any champagne toast. Louder than any check Vanessa Whitmore could ever write. Behind her, the wealthiest people in Manhattan stood frozen, their carefully constructed world of assumptions crumbling around them like the shards of Patricia's shattered champagne glass. Vanessa Whitmore stared at the space where Naomi had been standing, her checkbook still open in her trembling hands. For the first time in her life, she had absolutely no idea what to do next. The grand hall had transformed from a celebration into a courtroom where Vanessa Whitmore stood as the accused. Phones emerged from designer clutches and tuxedo pockets, not to call for help, but to capture what happened next. Richard Whitmore pushed through the crowd, his face red with champagne and embarrassment. Vanessa, what the hell did you just do? She couldn't answer. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in the air. The checkbook slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the marble floor, the sound sharp as a gavel. Patricia Ashford had backed into a pillar, one hand pressed to her chest as if she might actually faint. $800 million, she whispered. That girl has $800 million. Not a girl, came a voice from the back of the crowd. A genius. The sea of evening gowns and suits parted. Dr. Samuel Okonkwo stepped forward. He was the head of Westbridge Academy's STEM department, a Nigerian immigrant who'd earned dual PhDs from MIT before turning 40. His bow tie was slightly crooked, his glasses perpetually smudged, and his patience for wealthy ignorance had run out approximately 10 minutes ago. Dr. Okonkwo, Vanessa managed, grasping for some semblance of authority. This is a private matter. Nothing about what you just did was private, Mrs. Whitmore. Half of this room recorded it. He gestured to the phones still pointed in their direction. By tomorrow morning, you'll be viral. And not in the way your publicist would recommend. Vanessa's face drained of what little color remained. Dr. Okonkwo continued, his Nigerian accent giving weight to every syllable. Naomi Brooks is not just a scholarship student. She's the youngest person in Westbridge Academy's 127-year history to publish research in a peer-reviewed journal. She built an artificial intelligence algorithm that can predict cardiac arrest in patients 48 hours before symptoms appear. Google didn't buy her work out of charity. They bought it because it will save millions of lives. The crowd murmured, phones still recording. She came to Westbridge specifically because I recruited her, Dr. Okonkwo said, his voice rising. I flew to Brooklyn, sat in her grandmother's kitchen, and begged her to give us a chance. Because students like Naomi, students with her mind, her work ethic, her character, they don't need institutions like Westbridge. Westbridge needs them. Richard grabbed his wife's arm. We're leaving. Now. But Dr. Okonkwo wasn't finished. You asked her to prove she belongs here. Let me ask you something, Mrs. Whitmore. What have you contributed to this institution beyond money? What have your sons contributed beyond lacrosse trophies and disciplinary warnings for hazing younger students? Gasps erupted. The Whitmore twins were notorious, but no one dared speak about it publicly. How dare you? Vanessa started. How dare I? Dr. Okonkwo's laugh was bitter. You humiliated a 17-year-old girl in front of 200 people because she didn't look like what you expected wealth and intelligence to look like. You offered to pay double, as if her entire existence could be reduced to a transaction. And now you're offended that someone is finally telling you the truth. Vanessa's lawyer instincts kicked in. This is slander. I'll have your job. My job is secure, Dr. Okonkwo interrupted. Because unlike you, I actually serve the mission of this school. But yours? Your position on the board? Your family's legacy? I'd start worrying about that. From near the stage, Naomi's voice carried across the hall. Dr. Okonkwo, it's okay. I don't need anyone to defend me. She'd finished setting up the microphone system, because despite everything, she'd completed her task. The speakers crackled to life as she adjusted the final connection. Dr. Okonkwo turned toward her, his expression softening. With respect, Naomi, you shouldn't have to defend yourself. Not here. Not ever. Naomi descended the stage steps, her worn shoes clicking against marble. When she reached the center of the crowd, she didn't look at Vanessa. She looked at everyone else. I knew this would happen eventually, she said, her voice steady through the microphone system she'd just installed. I knew that keeping my background private would only work until it didn't. I hoped, maybe naively, that I could just be a student. Just Naomi from Brooklyn who loves robotics and terrible punk music and her grandmother's sweet potato pie. A few people smiled despite themselves. But that's not how the world works, is it? Naomi continued. The moment you see someone who doesn't fit your expectations, you make assumptions. You create stories. And those stories become true in your minds before the real person ever gets a chance to speak. She finally looked at Vanessa, and there was no anger in her eyes, only sadness. Mrs. Whitmore, you don't know me. You don't know that I sleep 4 hours a night because I'm taking college-level courses while finishing high school. You don't know that I send half my earnings to fund STEM programs in underserved schools. You don't know that I chose Westbridge's scholarship program specifically because I wanted to blend in, to be normal, to not be treated differently. Vanessa's lips trembled. I didn't know. No, you didn't. And you didn't ask. You saw a black girl in a uniform and decided you knew everything you needed to know. The silence was deafening. Then, from the back of the hall, slow clapping began. Everyone turned. An elderly woman in an elegant emerald gown walked forward. Her silver hair swept into a sophisticated updo. She moved with the kind of authority that money couldn't buy, the kind that came from decades of actually earning respect. Margaret Westbridge, the last living descendant of the school's founding family. 92 years old, rarely seen, even more rarely heard from. She'd been sitting in the corner the entire time, watching. Mrs. Whitmore, Margaret said, her voice remarkably strong for her age. You've just provided the most valuable lesson any Westbridge student could receive. You've shown us exactly what this institution must never become. Vanessa looked like she might vomit. Margaret reached Naomi and took her hand. My great-great-grandfather founded this school on a single principle, that brilliance exists everywhere, and privilege should never be the price of admission. We lost our way. We became exactly what you assumed we were, a playground for the wealthy. She turned to address the entire room. As the primary stakeholder and trustee of Westbridge Academy, I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Mrs. Whitmore, your position on the board is suspended pending review. The same goes for anyone else who participated in this disgrace. Patricia Ashford made a small squeaking sound. And Miss Brooks, Margaret continued, squeezing Naomi's hand, I'd like to offer you something better than a scholarship. I'd like to offer you a seat on our student advisory board, with full voting rights on curriculum, admissions, and donor relations. Naomi's eyes widened. Mrs. Westbridge, you've already proven you have better judgment than half our current board. Will you accept? For the first time that night, Naomi smiled. Yes, ma'am, I will. The room erupted. Some in applause, others in shocked murmurs. Vanessa Whitmore in barely contained rage as Margaret and Naomi walked together toward the exit. Dr. Okonkwo fell in step beside them. Behind them, the wealthiest families in Manhattan stood frozen, their champagne gone flat, their certainties shattered. And on the floor, Vanessa Whitmore's checkbook lay forgotten, its blank pages a perfect metaphor for the apology she didn't know how to write. The Whitmore penthouse overlooked Central Park from the 47th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights like an expensive painting. But tonight, Vanessa couldn't see the beauty. She stood in the dark living room, still wearing her silver gown. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text after text. Notification after notification. The videos had already spread beyond the gala attendees. Someone had posted to Twitter, and within 2 hours, #PayDoubleChallenge was trending nationwide. Richard sat on the leather sofa, tie loosened, scrolling through his own phone with increasing horror. Vanessa, we're on page 6. TMZ picked it up. There's already a change.org petition calling for your removal from every board you sit on. Turn it off, she whispered. I can't turn off reality. He looked up, and for the first time in their 20-year marriage, she saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. Disappointment. What were you thinking? I was thinking. Her voice cracked. I was thinking she didn't belong there. I was thinking we've invested millions into that school, and they're just handing out spots to anyone now. Anyone? Richard's voice was cold. You mean anyone who isn't white and wealthy? Vanessa spun around. Don't you dare make this about race. This is about standards. About legacy. About control, he interrupted. About you needing to feel superior to a 17-year-old girl who accomplished more before graduation than most people do in a lifetime. The words hit like a slap. The twins are getting texts, Richard continued, showing her his phone. Screenshots from their son's group chats filled the screen. Your mom's famous LOL, that scholarship girl owns your whole family. Whitmore charity case check bounced. Vanessa's stomach turned. Across town, in a modest 3-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, Naomi sat at her grandmother's kitchen table. The same table where Dr. Okonkwo had recruited her a year ago. The same table where she'd built her first robot at age 9 using parts from broken electronics. Her grandmother, Dorothy Brooks, set down a mug of chamomile tea. At 68, she'd worked as a nurse for 40 years, raised 3 children after her husband died, and taught Naomi that dignity was something you carried inside, not something someone could take away. You should eat something, baby, Dorothy said gently. Naomi hadn't touched the plate of food in front of her. She was staring at her phone, reading comment after comment on the viral videos. This is what real power looks like. She handled that with more grace than I ever could. That woman tried to humiliate her and got destroyed by facts. But also, great, another rich person pretending to struggle that she's been lying to everyone about being poor. Scholarship fraud? Naomi set the phone down, her hands trembling. Grandma, I never said I was poor. I never lied about anything. I just didn't advertise. Dorothy sat beside her, taking her granddaughter's hand. The world doesn't care about that nuance, baby. People see what they want to see. Some will celebrate you. Others will tear you down. The question is, who are you doing this for? I just wanted to learn, Naomi whispered. I wanted to be normal. Normal. Dorothy smiled sadly. Baby, you were never going to be normal. You're extraordinary. And that makes people uncomfortable. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dorothy checked the peephole, then opened it. Dr. Okonkwo stood in the hallway, still wearing his tuxedo from the gala, looking exhausted. "I hope it's not too late," he said. "I wanted to check on Naomi." Dorothy ushered him in. He declined tea but accepted a seat at the table. "How are you holding up?" he asked Naomi. She shrugged. "I've had better nights." "I owe you an apology," Dr. Okonkwo said. "I should have protected you from that situation. I knew the culture at that gala. I knew how some of those parents operate. I should have been standing beside you from the moment you walked in. Dr. O, you defended me after. That's enough." "It's not." He leaned forward, his voice intense. "Naomi, you are the most talented student I've taught in 23 years. But tonight showed me something I've been ignoring, that Westbridge isn't safe for students like you. Not yet. And that's on us, not you." Dorothy cleared her throat. "What happens now? With that woman?" "Vanessa Whitmore will face consequences," Dr. Okonkwo said. "Margaret Westbridge doesn't make idle threats. But the real question is whether the institution itself will change." Naomi finally looked up, meeting his eyes. "Do you think it can?" "I think you're about to find out. Margaret offered you a position on the Student Advisory Board. That's not ceremonial, it means real power to shape policy, admissions, culture. But it also means staying visible, staying vulnerable. Are you ready for that?" Naomi thought about the videos, the comments, the judgment. She thought about Vanessa Whitmore's face when her assumptions shattered. She thought about all the other kids like her, brilliant, hardworking, overlooked, who deserved a chance. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm ready." Back at the Whitmore penthouse, Vanessa's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Mrs. Whitmore, this is Margaret Westbridge." Vanessa's blood ran cold. "Mrs. Westbridge, save it. I'm not calling to hear excuses. I'm calling to inform you that the emergency board meeting has been scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. You're required to attend." "Of course. I'll prepare a statement." "You'll prepare to listen," Margaret interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "For once in your privileged life, you're going to sit quietly and hear what people really think of you. Not the polite society version. The truth." Vanessa's throat tightened. "Mrs. Westbridge, I made a mistake. I reacted poorly to an unexpected situation. But I've dedicated years to Westbridge." "You've dedicated years to yourself," Margaret corrected. "To maintain your position. To keep Westbridge exactly as it was when you attended. Exclusive, insular, and comfortable for people who look like you. Well, that era is over. You're going to destroy everything this institution stands for." "No, Vanessa. I'm going to restore it. And you're going to watch. Tomorrow morning. Don't be late." The line went dead. Vanessa stood in the darkness, her reflection ghostly in the massive windows, and for the first time since she was a child, she felt genuinely afraid of consequences she couldn't buy her way out of. Across the city, Naomi lay in her childhood bedroom, walls still covered with posters of scientists and engineers, shelves packed with robotics trophies and coding books. Her phone continued buzzing with messages, interview requests, think pieces being written about her in real time. But she silenced it all. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. A board meeting where she'd face the institution that had both elevated and endangered her. A decision about whether to stay at Westbridge or transfer somewhere less complicated. But tonight, she was just Naomi Brooks from Brooklyn. Extraordinary, exhausted, and finally undeniably seen. Dorothy cracked the door open. "Are you sleeping, baby?" "Not yet, Grandma." Dorothy came in, sat on the edge of the bed like she had when Naomi was small. "That woman, Mrs. Whitmore, you think she's learned anything?" Naomi thought about Vanessa's face. The shock, the horror, the desperate scrambling for control. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I learned something." "What's that?" "That hiding who I am doesn't protect me. It just makes me smaller. And I'm done being small." Dorothy kissed her forehead. "That's my girl." As her grandmother left, Naomi stared at the ceiling, her mind already working through scenarios, strategies, and the speech she'd give at tomorrow's board meeting. She'd wanted to be normal. Instead, she'd become exactly what the world needed. Undeniable proof that genius doesn't come wrapped in the package society expects. And tomorrow, she'd make sure Westbridge Academy never forgot it. The Westbridge Academy boardroom smelled of old money and older wood. Hand-carved mahogany panels lined the walls, each engraved with the names of founding families. Crystal sconces cast warm light over a table that could seat 20 but felt designed to intimidate. This morning, every seat was filled. Margaret Westbridge sat at the head, her emerald dress replaced by a charcoal suit that meant business. To her left sat Dr. Okonkwo and 3 other faculty members. To her right, the school's legal counsel and head of admissions. Around the table, board members who'd been summoned on 12 hours' notice. Some curious, others defensive, all aware that their institution was now national news. Vanessa Whitmore entered at 8:52 a.m. Not fashionably late, defeated late. She wore a conservative navy suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back severely. No armor today, just exposure. Patricia Ashford arrived behind her, equally subdued. They took their seats in silence at exactly 9 a.m. The door opened again. Naomi Brooks walked in, flanked by her grandmother Dorothy and a woman in an expensive pantsuit who carried herself like she owned courtrooms. Alexander Chun, one of Manhattan's top civil rights attorneys, working pro bono. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Margaret rose. Thank you all for coming on short notice. This emergency session addresses the incident at last night's gala, which has brought significant negative attention to Westbridge Academy. Before we begin, I want to make something clear. This is not a trial. This is a reckoning. She gestured to a screen on the wall. I'm going to show you what the world saw last night. The lights dimmed. The video played. Vanessa's voice, crystal clear. Let's not pretend you're actually one of us. Patricia's giggle. The checkbook. The cruel offer. The mockery. Then Naomi's calm revelation. The bank balance. The Forbes article. The stunned silence. When the lights came back up, several board members wouldn't meet Vanessa's eyes. Since midnight, Margaret continued, this video has been viewed 47 million times. We've received over 3,000 emails, some supporting Naomi, others threatening to withdraw donations unless we address the scholarship problem. She paused, letting that poison sink in. We've also received calls from the New York Times, CNN, and Good Morning America requesting interviews. The mayor's office contacted me personally. And Stanford University has offered Naomi a full scholarship with housing, effective immediately. Naomi's expression remained neutral, but her grandmother squeezed her hand. Margaret turned to Vanessa. Mrs. Whitmore, you have the floor. Explain yourself. Vanessa stood slowly, her prepared statement trembling in her hands. I want to begin by apologizing to Miss Brooks. My behavior was inappropriate, judgmental, and beneath the standards Westbridge represents. I reacted emotionally to what I perceived as. Stop, Margaret commanded. Put down the script your lawyer wrote. Tell us what you were actually thinking. Vanessa's composure cracked. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth. Why did you target that girl? The word girl hung in the air like an accusation. Vanessa's hands dropped to her sides. Because she didn't look like she belonged. Because I've spent 15 years on this board protecting Westbridge's reputation, and suddenly we're letting in students who... She stopped, realizing the trap. Students who what? Dr. Okonkwo asked quietly. Students who haven't earned their place through legacy. Vanessa finished weakly. Legacy, Margaret repeated. Your sons are legacies. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, what have they accomplished besides spending your money and collecting disciplinary warnings? Vanessa's face reddened. That's not relevant. It's absolutely relevant, Margaret snapped. You question Naomi's right to be here while your own children coast on your donations. Let's talk about earning places, shall we? She pulled out a folder. Bradford Whitmore, 2.4 GPA, 3 cheating accusations, suspended twice for hazing. Cameron Whitmore, 2.7 GPA, vandalized school property, under investigation for creating a ranking system rating female students by appearance. Vanessa looked like she'd been struck. Meanwhile, Margaret continued, Pulling out another folder, Naomi Brooks, 4.0 GPA, published researcher, national robotics champion, founder of a nonprofit that provides free coding classes to underserved communities, an inventor of technology that will save countless lives. She slammed both folders on the table. So tell me again about earning your place. Vanessa sank into her chair, tears streaming silently. Patricia raised her hand hesitantly. Mrs. Westbridge, with respect, we've all made assumptions. Is it fair to single out Vanessa when many of us were uncomfortable with the scholarship expansion? Uncomfortable, Margaret repeated slowly. Elaborate. Patricia shifted. The donors expect a certain standard. When we increase scholarships, especially for students from very different backgrounds, it changes the culture. Parents worry about their children's experience. You mean white parents worry about their white children experiencing diversity? Alexanderchin said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was surgical. Let's use honest language. The room froze. I've reviewed Westbridge's admissions data for the past 20 years. Alexandra continued, opening her briefcase. Of the 1,847 students admitted during that period, only 127 were students of color. Of those, only 41 were black. And of those 41, 38 came from families earning under $75,000 annually, meaning they were scholarship students. She looked around the table. You've created a system where blackness and poverty are synonymous in your minds, where wealth and whiteness are default assumptions. So when Naomi walked in, black, young, in a scholarship uniform, you couldn't conceive that she might be the wealthiest person in the room. Board members squirmed. That's not just bias, Alexandra said. It's institutional racism. That's a serious accusation. The legal counsel interjected. It's a documented pattern. And if Westbridge doesn't address it, my firm will file a discrimination lawsuit on behalf of every scholarship student who's been subjected to this hostile environment. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Denials, deflections, panic. Margaret's gavel cracked like thunder. Enough! Silence fell. She turned to Naomi. Miss Brooks, you've been silent through all this. What do you want? Naomi stood, releasing her grandmother's hand. When she spoke, her voice was steady, clear, and impossible to ignore. I want Westbridge to decide what it actually stands for. The plaque in your lobby says, excellence without exclusion. But that's been a lie for decades. You let people like me in just enough to look progressive in your marketing materials, but not enough to actually change anything. She walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each board member. Mrs. Whitmore isn't the problem. She's a symptom. The problem is that an entire room of wealthy, powerful people watched her humiliate me, and only one person, Mrs. Westbridge, had the courage to intervene. Several board members looked away, ashamed. So here's what I want, Naomi continued. I want mandatory bias training for everyone. Staff, faculty, students, parents, board members. I want the scholarship program expanded and renamed, so it's not a mark of charity but of merit. I want diverse representation on every committee that makes decisions about student life. She stopped beside Vanessa's chair. And I want Mrs. Whitmore to stay on the board. Gasps erupted. Margaret's eyebrows shot up. Vanessa looked at Naomi in shock. Not because she deserves it, Naomi clarified, but because if she leaves, she learns nothing. She becomes a cautionary tale and everyone moves on. But if she stays, if she has to work alongside the students and families she looked down on, if she has to face the consequences of her assumptions every single day, that's when real change happens. She looked directly at Vanessa. I don't want your apology. I want your education. And I want you to feel every uncomfortable moment of it. The room was utterly silent. Margaret leaned back, a small smile playing at her lips. Motion to implement Miss Brooks's recommendations. All in favor. Hands rose around the table, slowly at first, then faster. Opposed. 2 hands. Patricia's and one elderly board member who'd been silent all morning. Motion carries. Margaret turned to Vanessa. You remain on this board under probation. You will attend every bias training session. You will mentor scholarship students. And you will write a public apology, not to save your reputation, but because you owe Naomi Brooks and every student like her a debt you can never fully repay. Vanessa nodded, unable to speak. This meeting is adjourned. But understand this. Margaret stood, her 92 years suddenly formidable. Westbridge Academy will change. With your cooperation or without it. The choice is yours. As people filed out, Naomi remained. So did Vanessa. They stood on opposite sides of the massive table, the gap between them filled with everything unsaid. Finally, Vanessa spoke, her voice broken. Why did you defend me? After what I did? Naomi considered the question. Because canceling you is easy. Changing you is hard. And I didn't come to Westbridge easily. She walked toward the door, then paused. Mrs. Whitmore? That offer you made last night. To pay double my scholarship. Vanessa nodded miserably. I'm holding you to it. But not for me. Create a fund. Name it after someone who challenged your assumptions. And use it to bring in students who'll continue challenging them. Before Vanessa could respond, Naomi was gone. In the hallway, Dorothy hugged her granddaughter tight. You're something special, baby. I'm tired, Grandma. I know, but you're also changing the world. Through the boardroom windows, they could see reporters gathering outside. News vans, cameras, people demanding statements. Margaret appeared beside them. There's a press conference scheduled in 20 minutes. You don't have to attend if you don't want to. Naomi looked at the cameras, at the world waiting for her next move. Yes, I do, she said. Because if I don't control my story, someone else will. And together, Naomi, Dorothy, Margaret, and Dr. Okonkwo, they walked toward the media storm, ready to speak truth to the power that had tried to silence them. The reckoning had only just begun. The transformation of Westbridge Academy didn't happen overnight. It happened in small, painful increments, like a bone healing after being broken. Naomi sat in the newly established Student Equity Council meeting, a space that hadn't existed a month ago. Around the conference table sat 12 students, scholarship recipients, legacy admits, international students, and day students from the Bronx who commuted 2 hours each way. Vanessa Whitmore sat in the back corner, notepad in hand, forbidden from speaking unless directly addressed. Her role today was to listen, truly listen, to voices she'd spent years talking over. The dress code policy is discriminatory, said Marcus Chin, a sophomore on full scholarship from Queens. It bans do-rags and bonnets but allows designer headbands that cost $300. Tell me how that's not targeting black and brown students. Several students nodded. Naomi made a note. The cafeteria pricing is also a problem, added Jasmine Rodriguez, a junior. Students on meal plans don't realize that scholarship students often can't afford the optional snack items. So we either pack lunch from home and look different, or we go hungry during long school days. Vanessa's pen moved across her notebook, each word a small cut of awareness. Let's talk about college counseling, said David Park, a senior legacy student whose grandfather had endowed the library. I noticed that scholarship students get assigned to counselors with heavier caseloads. My counselor spent 3 hours helping me polish my Yale essay. My roommate, who has better grades than me, got 45 minutes for his entire application season. The room fell silent. Even David looked uncomfortable admitting his privilege. Naomi glanced at Vanessa, whose face had gone pale. Mrs. Whitmore, you've been observing for 3 weeks now. What have you learned? It was the first time Naomi had directly addressed her. Vanessa stood slowly, her hands shaking slightly. I've learned that I was blind. Not because I couldn't see, but because I chose not to. Every issue raised here has existed for years, and I sat in board meetings approving budgets and policies without once asking how they affected students who weren't like my sons. She paused, her voice catching. I've learned that equity isn't the same as equality. That giving everyone the same resources doesn't help when some students start miles behind. And I've learned that my silence was violence. Marcus crossed his arms. So what are you going to do about it? I've started the fund Naomi requested. The Dorothy Brooks Scholarship Fund. named after Naomi's grandmother. It's endowed with $2 million, and it specifically supports students from underserved communities who demonstrate both academic excellence and commitment to social justice. A few students exchanged surprised looks. I've also resigned from 3 other private school boards where I held similar positions because I realized I was replicating the same harm everywhere I went. And I've enrolled in a graduate course on educational equity at Columbia because I need to understand systems of oppression I've perpetuated. Jasmine leaned forward. That's nice. But what about your sons? They're still here, still benefiting from legacy admission while treating scholarship students like we're invisible. Vanessa's jaw tightened. My sons are attending mandatory restorative justice sessions. Bradford has been removed from the lacrosse team pending completion of an intensive anti-hazing program. And Cameron's phone was confiscated after we discovered the ranking system. He's on academic probation. You took away their privileges, Marcus said slowly. That must have been hard. Losing my illusions was harder, Vanessa replied, realizing I raised entitled children because I was entitled myself. That's something I'll carry forever. The meeting continued for another hour, addressing everything from library hours that excluded students who worked after-school jobs, to legacy preference in club leadership positions, to the lack of diverse authors in English curricula. By the end, they'd created 17 actionable recommendations for the administration. As students filed out, Naomi remained. So did Vanessa. You don't have to keep attending these, Naomi said quietly. You've met the board's requirement. I'm not doing this for the board anymore, Vanessa replied. I'm doing it because every time I sit in that corner and listen to students describe their experiences, I realize how much harm I've caused while thinking I was doing good. She gathered her things, then hesitated. Naomi, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why did you really insist I stay on the board? You could have destroyed me. You had every right. Naomi considered her answer carefully. Because destroying you would have been satisfying for about 10 minutes. But changing the institution requires people who have power within it to do the uncomfortable work. You have access to donor networks, alumni circles, social capital I'll never have. Not because I'm not wealthy, but because wealth and acceptance aren't the same thing. She met Vanessa's eyes. I need you to use that access to open doors I can't. To have conversations with people who won't listen to me. To make equity fashionable among the people who've made exclusion normal. Vanessa nodded slowly. I'm trying. Last week, I hosted a dinner for major donors and invited speakers from education equity organizations. Half the guests left early, but half stayed. Yes, half stayed. Then do it again, and again, until the half that leaves feels like the ones who don't belong. That evening, Naomi returned to her grandmother's apartment in Brooklyn. The space felt smaller now, though nothing had physically changed. Dorothy was cooking, oxtails and rice, filling the apartment with warmth and memory. How was the meeting? Productive. Exhausting. Naomi dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch. Grandma, sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. Staying at Westbridge, trying to fix something that might be too broken. Dorothy turned from the stove. Are you having doubts? I have options. Stanford's offer still stands. MIT reached out. I could finish high school anywhere and still be fine. Then why stay? Naomi stared at the ceiling. Because if I leave, nothing changes. They'll say I couldn't handle it, or that I was too radical, or that the situation was overblown. But if I stay, if I show up every day and force them to see me, to hear me, to reckon with me, maybe it means something for the students who come after. Dorothy smiled. That sounds like the right reason to me. But I'm tired, Grandma. I'm 17. I should be worried about prom and college essays, not institutional racism and board politics. Baby, nobody chooses their moment in history. Chooses you. And when it does, you can run from it or rise to it. She brought over a plate of food. You're rising. That's all anyone can ask. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who've weathered storms together. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Okonkwo. The New York Times wants to do a feature on the changes at Westbridge. They want to interview you, Margaret, and Vanessa together. Your call. She showed the message to Dorothy. What do you think? Naomi asked. I think you already know what you're going to do. Naomi smiled and typed back. Only if we include student voices. This isn't about 3 people. It's about the hundreds who've been silenced. 3 dots appeared. Then, agreed. I'll make it happen. The following Saturday, Westbridge hosted its first community open house. An event designed to welcome prospective students from all backgrounds, not just those who could afford the admission fee to tour. Families from across New York City arrived, some in luxury cars, others on public transportation. The cafeteria offered free lunch. Current students gave tours, and for the first time, those tours included honest conversations about both the opportunities and challenges at Westbridge. Naomi stood near the robotics lab, explaining her AI research to a group of wide-eyed middle schoolers from the Bronx. One girl, maybe 13, raised her hand. Did you really have almost $1 billion and still choose to come here on scholarship? Naomi crouched to eye level. I did. Because money isn't what makes you smart or worthy or deserving. Your mind does that. Your work does that. And I wanted to prove that to myself and everyone else. But people were mean to you, the girl said softly. Yes, some were, but some weren't. And the ones who were mean, they're learning. Slowly, painfully, but they're learning. She smiled. And you know what the best part is? Now I get to help decide who gets admitted here. And I promise you, I'm looking for brilliant kids like you. Not because of what your parents have, but because of what you can become. The girl's eyes lit up. Across the lobby, Vanessa watched the interaction from a distance. Beside her stood Margaret Westbridge, leaning on her cane. She's remarkable, Margaret said. She is. Vanessa agreed. I almost destroyed her, but you didn't. And now you have a choice. Spend the rest of your life drowning in guilt, or spend it building the world she's envisioning. Vanessa watched Naomi laugh with the young students, watched her grandmother beam with pride from nearby, watched the way hope looked when it was finally offered to everyone. I choose the building, Vanessa said quietly. Margaret squeezed her arm. Good, because the work is just beginning. As the sun set over Westbridge Academy, casting golden light through century-old windows, something felt different. Not fixed, transformation takes years, not weeks. But it is possible. Finally, gloriously possible. And in the robotics lab, surrounded by students who saw futures they'd never dared imagine before, Naomi Brooks smiled. Not because the battle was over, but because for the first time she wasn't fighting it alone. Spring had arrived at Westbridge Academy with the kind of hope that only follows a hard winter. Cherry blossoms lined the pathways where students walked between classes, students who, for the first time in the school's history, actually reflected the diversity of New York City itself. The numbers told part of the story. Scholarship enrollment up 340%, disciplinary disparities down 67%, parent complaints about lowered standards, replaced by waiting lists of families desperate to be part of what Westbridge was becoming. But numbers never tell the whole story. Naomi stood at the podium in the packed auditorium, wearing her graduation gown, royal blue with gold honors cords draped across her shoulders. She'd been chosen as valedictorian by a vote of the faculty, though she'd initially declined, saying others deserved the honor more. Dr. Okonkwo had pulled her aside. Naomi, your transcript is flawless. Your research is published. Your impact is undeniable. But that's not why you should do this. You should do it because every black girl sitting in this audience needs to see herself at that podium. Representation isn't charity. It's a necessity. So here she stood. The audience included her grandmother in the front row, wearing a purple dress and a smile that could light the city. Beside Dorothy sat Margaret Westbridge, now 93 but still sharp as ever. Dr. Okonkwo sat with the faculty, his eyes already glistening with pride. And in the back row, almost hidden, sat Vanessa Whitmore. She'd asked to sit separately from the main donor section, a small act of humility that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Her sons had not graduated with honors, but they'd completed their probation and, more importantly, had begun the slow work of becoming better humans. Cameron had even joined the peer mentorship program, working with incoming scholarship students. Naomi adjusted the microphone and began. 6 months ago, I stood in a different room at this school, and someone tried to make me small. They looked at me and saw only what they expected. Assumptions wrapped in expensive clothing and cruel words. They offered to pay double my scholarship if I could prove I belonged here. The audience stirred. Everyone knew this story. It has been analyzed, debated, turned into thin pieces and viral threads. But here's what I've learned since that night. Belonging isn't something you prove. It's something you build. And you can't build it alone. She looked out at the sea of faces. Students who'd fought alongside her in equity councils. Teachers who'd revised curricula. Parents who'd chosen growth over comfort. I'm standing here today not because I'm exceptional, though my grandmother would disagree. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Dorothy dabbed her eyes. I'm standing here because this institution chose to be exceptional. To look at itself honestly, admit its failures, and do the hard, uncomfortable work of change. Naomi's voice grew stronger. When I arrived at Westbridge, I was one of 41 black students in a school of almost 600. Today, we're 137. When I started, there was no student equity council, no bias training, no accountability for discriminatory policies. Today, those things are embedded in how Westbridge operates. She paused. But numbers aren't transformation. People are. And I want to talk about one person specifically. Vanessa's head snapped up, panic flashing across her face. Mrs. Vanessa Whitmore is in this audience. 6 months ago, she said things to me that were cruel, dismissive, and rooted in assumptions about my worth. She humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. She tried to make me disappear. The silence was absolute. Today, she's still on the board of this school. And I want to tell you why that matters. Naomi stepped away from the podium, speaking directly to the audience without the barrier. It would have been easy, satisfying even, to destroy her, to demand her resignation, to turn her into a cautionary tale, to let her fade into obscurity while we moved on feeling righteous. But transformation doesn't come from exile. It comes from proximity. She found Vanessa in the crowd. Their eyes met. Mrs. Whitmore didn't just apologize. She showed up. Every single student equity council meeting for 6 months. Every bias training session. Every uncomfortable conversation. She created a scholarship fund worth millions. She restructured her philanthropy. She had hard conversations with her own children about privilege and harm. And she did all of that while knowing that many people, myself included, were watching for her to fail. Naomi's voice softened. She didn't fail. She changed. Not perfectly, not without stumbling, but genuinely. And that matters more than any apology ever could. She turned back to the full audience. Because here's the truth. Most of us hold biases we don't even know we have. Most of us have caused harm without intending to. The question isn't whether we've been Vanessa Whitmore. The question is, when confronted with our own biases, will we defend them or dismantle them? The auditorium erupted in applause. Students stood. The faculty stood. Even some of the old guard donors who'd initially resisted change found themselves on their feet. Vanessa remained seated, tears streaming down her face, unable to move. Naomi continued, I came to Westbridge to learn robotics and engineering. Instead, I learned something more valuable, that institutions are just collections of people and people can choose to be better. Not someday. Not when it's convenient. Right now. She pulled out a small object from her pocket. A flash drive. This contains the full curriculum for the equity program we've built here. I'm making it open source. Free to any school that wants it. Because what happened here at Westbridge can't stay here. It has to spread. More applause, louder this time. To the scholarship students in this audience, you belong here. Not because someone was generous enough to let you in, but because your brilliance earned you a seat at this table. Don't shrink. Don't hide. Take up space. Students who looked like her, black, brown, first generation, sat up straighter. To the legacy students, your family's history at this school is important. But it's not more important than someone else's future. Use your privilege to open doors, not guard them. Some legacy students nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. Good. And to the adults in this room, students are watching everything you do. Not just your words, but your choices. Who you defend. Who you dismiss. Who you believe. Make sure you're modeling the world you claim you want to build. She returned to the podium for her final words. 6 months ago, someone tried to pay me to prove my worth. Today, I'm graduating as valedictorian, heading to MIT with a full scholarship I actually need now. She smiled. Because I just donated most of my earnings to educational equity initiatives across the country. Gasps and applause mixed together. I don't tell you that to be impressive. I tell you that because worth isn't measured in bank accounts or test scores or family names. It's measured in what you do with whatever you've been given. And I was given a chance to change something broken. So I did. She looked directly at her grandmother. My grandmother always told me, when life makes you visible, make sure they see something worth remembering. Today, I hope I've done that. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes as Naomi descended from the stage. People pressed forward. Students wanting photos, parents wanting to shake her hand, reporters shouting questions she'd learned to politely deflect. But she moved through all of it toward one person. Vanessa Whitmore stood at the back, still crying, looking lost in the sea of celebration. Mrs. Whitmore, Naomi said quietly. Vanessa looked up, startled. Naomi, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. Naomi held out her hand. Thank you for doing the work, for showing up, for proving that people can change. Vanessa took her hand, then pulled her into an embrace that was equal parts gratitude and grief. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll always be sorry. I know, Naomi replied. But now I also see who you're becoming. And that matters more. When they pulled apart, Vanessa reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. A letter I wrote 3 months ago but didn't know how to give you. You can tell me what it says, Naomi offered. Vanessa shook her head. Read it later, when you have time. It's not an apology, we're past that. It's a promise. About the work I'll keep doing long after you've left Westbridge. Naomi took the envelope. I'll hold you to it. Please do. As Vanessa walked away, not fleeing, but giving Naomi space to celebrate, Dorothy appeared, pulling her granddaughter into a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, baby. Your parents would have been, too. Naomi let herself cry then, for the first time in months. Not sad tears, relieved tears, exhausted tears, hopeful tears. Dr. Okonkwo joined them, placing a hand on Naomi's shoulder. You did it. You actually changed this place. We did it, Naomi corrected. All of us. Margaret Westbridge approached slowly, leaning heavily on her cane. At 93, every movement was deliberate. Miss Brooks, a word? They stepped aside, near the windows overlooking the garden. I'm dying, Margaret said simply. Not today, not next week, but soon. And I want you to know that in my final years, I got to witness something I thought impossible. This institution becoming what it always should have been. Naomi's throat tightened. Mrs. Westbridge, let me finish. I've rewritten my will. A significant portion of my estate will fund the equity initiatives you've started. But more than that, I've established the Naomi Brooks Fellowship, a full scholarship plus stipend for 10 students each year who demonstrate both academic excellence and commitment to social justice. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Because you reminded me why my great-great-grandfather built this school in the first place. Not to hoard opportunity, but to multiply it. She squeezed Naomi's hand with surprising strength. Promise me you'll keep fighting. Not just here. Everywhere. I promise. That evening, Naomi sat on her grandmother's fire escape, the same place she'd sat as a child, looking at the city lights and dreaming of possibilities she hadn't yet had words for. She opened Vanessa's letter. Dear Naomi, you'll never know the full weight of what you did for me that night. Not just exposing my cruelty, but offering me a path forward. You could have destroyed me with a word. Instead, you challenged me to become someone worthy of forgiveness I don't deserve. These 6 months have been the hardest of my life. Every equity meeting forced me to confront the harm I'd caused. Every conversation with students revealed blindness I'd chosen. Every moment of discomfort was necessary. I'm writing this to make you a promise. I will spend the rest of my life doing this work. Not for redemption, I'm not sure I deserve that, but because now that I've seen what I couldn't see before, I can't unsee it. I will advocate for equity in every room I enter. I will challenge other wealthy parents. I will fund scholarships. I will show up, not because it's comfortable, but because you taught me that comfort is the enemy of justice. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving, even when I'd proven I didn't deserve it. With gratitude and commitment, Vanessa. Naomi folded the letter carefully and looked out at the city. The same city, but somehow different now. Or maybe she was different. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen, the sophomore from the Equity Council. Hey, I just got elected student body president. Want to help me make next year even better? She smiled and typed back. I'm headed to MIT, but I'll consult remotely. Keep fighting. 3 dots, then we will, because you showed us how. Naomi leaned back against the brick wall, the spring air warm on her face, and let herself feel what she'd been too busy to feel for months. Pride, exhaustion, hope, peace. She'd walked into Westbridge Academy wanting to be invisible, just another student learning robotics. Instead, she'd become undeniable. And in doing so, she taught an entire institution what belonging actually looked like. Not purchased, not granted, not proven. Built, together, brick by painful brick. Below her, Brooklyn hummed with life. People coming home from work, kids playing in the street, the bodega on the corner closing for the night. The same world she'd always known. But now she knew something else, too. That one voice, speaking the truth at the right moment, could shift everything. That privilege checked and redirected could become power shared. That institutions could change when people inside them chose courage over comfort. And that sometimes the girl they tried to make small becomes exactly the giant the world needed. Naomi Brooks closed her eyes and let the city sing her forward, toward MIT, toward the future, toward whatever came next. Ready, worthy, unbreakable, and finally entirely beautifully herself.